2 years ago, I walked away from my life. I sold my house, I quit my job, I got a divorce, I gave away my paid off vehicle to a family member, and I sold and donated everything else. And I didn't have some big safety net waiting for me on the other side. I definitely didn't have millions of dollars, and I didn't have any perfectly mapped out plan that I was going to be living on cruise ships or anything like that. No. I just knew that I couldn't keep living the way that I was living. And I remember thinking this might either be the best decision I ever make or it might be the worst. But there was no way of knowing until I actually did it. So I left and I am not going back. Friend, if you've ever had that thought just quietly sitting in your mind like, I can't keep doing this, then you already understand what I was going through back then, because that's where this all started for me. And I know you might be watching this thinking, okay, that's all fine and dandy, but what about the financial part? If I walked away from everything, what would this even look like for me? I'm going to get into that because that's really what changed everything for me. Before I made this decision, my life was actually fine. I had a steady 6-figure job as an accountant with a Fortune 500 company. I owned my home. My car was paid off. I had no consumer debt, and life was amazing. I had what people would call stability. And if you had looked at my life from the outside, you probably would have said, she's doing pretty good. And I was for a while, especially for someone with my background. If you want to know more about my backstory, growing up in poverty, being widowed, how toxic my job became, and how I found out that my marriage was a sham, you can check out this live video that I did. I'll put a link to it at the end of this video, so you can check that out after you watch this one. Alright, so fast forward to October 2023. I was now in a place that I think a lot of people live their entire lives. I absolutely started hating my job. I found out that I was married to a stranger, and I didn't really know that it was time for a change because my life was still comfortable and predictable, and I guess to some degree acceptable. So I tried working on everything, tried to fix everything myself, and I just kept trying and trying and trying. The thought to leave everything didn't really hit me all at once. It kept showing up in small ways, like I'd be just going through a normal day, doing normal things, and I'd have this quiet moment where I think, is this really it? Not in like a dramatic way, just like I was on autopilot and I knew that something was missing because I was super happy in my earlier days, right? So in my earlier childhood days, even growing up as a child in poverty, when I was a wife and a mom, I knew what happiness looked like. But now I was wondering, is my life going to keep looking like this for the next 10, 20, 30 years? Dreading going into an office with these ghetto behind people, getting passed over for raises and promotions while I was steadily getting an increase in my workload and watching other people milk the system. Once you start thinking like that, it's hard to stop because now you become aware, and eventually it becomes uncomfortable and it forces you to choose. You can either ignore it or you can do something about it. And I tried to ignore it for a while. I really did. Because doing something about it meant blowing up everything that felt safe to me. And if you know anything about me, I am not about chaos or anything in my life blowing up. When I finally decided that I was tired of being tired, I took a different route than most people would. I didn't start asking myself questions like, how am I going to make money? Where am I going to live? What if I mess this up? What if I regret this? I was not asking those questions. I had been accustomed to knowing that all things will work together in my favor as long as I put my faith in God. When I tell you I ripped that Band-Aid off and I never looked back, honey, You would have thought I was crazy. Some people in my life probably thought I was crazy. I don't think anybody ever told me that they thought that, but I'm pretty sure they thought it. I didn't have any clean answers to anything. I just knew I had done the math, and this is where most people get stuck, right? Not because they can't change their life, but because they've never actually done the math. This piece of hair is bothering me. A lot of people have never sat down and actually figured out their numbers, and they haven't really thought about things like, what would it cost you to live differently? What would you cut? What would you keep? Where and how would you live? That's exactly why I created Retire Without Millions, because this isn't about quitting your life overnight. No, honey. It's about understanding your numbers and building something that actually works for you. If you've been thinking about that, this course will walk you through how to build a confident financial plan that doesn't require millions. I'll leave a link in the video description. Once I did the math, I knew that with what I had in savings from selling my house, my investments that I had put aside, and my 401k retirement, I knew that I wasn't going to be rich. But I also knew that I was far more blessed than the majority of people on this planet. Most Americans are. I had a feeling that for me, staying was going to cost me more than leaving. And that's a hard thing to explain to people. Because on paper, staying looks like the smarter choice. But life isn't lived on paper. So I made the decision. In the first quarter of 2024, I sold my house, I quit my job, I filed for divorce, and I started letting go of almost everything that I own. That part alone was not really emotional for me. A lot of your identity is tied up in your stuff, and I know that I wasn't living in slavery, but when I tell you that I felt like I was in bondage so much that I might as well have been a slave, friend, that's when you know that you know that you know that you cannot allow stuff to hold you back from the freedom that you know is out there. Until you start getting rid of it, you don't realize how much stuff has you weighed down. When I finally decided, even if I have to live under a bridge, I'm going to live in freedom, that's when I stepped into something completely different. I started living full-time on cruise ships. Not for a week, not for a vacation, but as my actual life. And I remember thinking, okay, this is either going to work or it's not. But for the first time in a long time, I felt something different. I felt truly free. And of course, the question everyone always asks me is, how do you afford that? I don't tell people how much money I actually had in savings and investments because I know that they would laugh and call me crazy for leaving my job with what they feel is not enough. Here's what I realized. It's not always about how much money that you have. It's about how your life is structured. My biggest expense before was housing. Once that changed, everything else shifted and I started building my income differently. Not overnight, not perfectly, but very intentionally. And over time, this became something that I could actually sustain. Now, I don't want to act like this is perfect. There are trade-offs, right? There's uncertainty. There are moments where I don't know exactly what's next. There are quiet moments when I briefly wonder if I really made the right decisions, if I made the right choices. But here's the difference. I chose this. I chose this life. And that freedom of choice changes how everything feels. 2 years ago, I walked away from my life and I ain't going back. Not because everything in my life is perfect now. No, far from it. But because this life right here, it finally feels like mine, you know? And once you experience that, going back isn't even an option anymore. This has been Linnell with more proof that life doesn't have to look the way they said it should.